This is the home stretch, so can everyone stand up for me? We've all been sitting for a long, long time, and I'm tired. I'm sure you are too. So raise your hands if you had a good time last night and you're tired, but you want to have a good time tonight. Yeah. Stretch it out. And give your neighbor a big high five because you made it through this whole conference. Almost. You can give him another high five after tonight if you survive. So, this is 40Berkeley, and I'm going to tell you about Boston and the Beantown Beat. I'm going to give you the lowdown on the hostel scene and 40Berkeley. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself first. I'm not the owner of 40Berkeley. I will tell you a little bit about him and his wife shortly. Mostly what I do at the hostel, I am in charge of all of the events and all of social media, everything that you see online, from review responses to our website to all of our social media stuff, that's on me. So now you know the face behind the Facebook page, so to speak. I also do a lot of work with new businesses in the Boston area. Boston has very quickly become the startup mecca on the East Coast of the United States, so a lot of really innovative, really unique startup businesses are starting there, and I've taken it upon myself to make sure that 40Berkeley is involved with any of them that seem relevant and cool to our guests. So we're constantly coming up with new and interesting ways to share those types of services with guests and kind of be a leader in the technology sector for hostels. So I'll talk a little bit about that too. But first I'm going to talk about the Boston hostel scene. So Boston's actually pretty small. As a city itself, you can walk around it in about a day. So you can come for a weekend, stay with me, and I'll show you the whole thing in about 24 hours. In the city itself, there's only about 650,000 people that live there. But between the hours of 9 to 5, that number actually increases by like 40%. So most of the people don't live in the city. It's super, super expensive. I don't think I could ever afford to live in the city. Mostly it's like families, people that have had money for generations and generations and generations. But the outlying areas are very popular to live in, and it's very easy to commute in. There are, however, a ton of visitors that come into the city, whether it's business or travel or tourism. About a third of them, I would say, is tourists, but a lot of people come into Boston for travel. About 12 million visitors a year to the greater Boston area, mostly all of Massachusetts, but almost everyone that comes in goes through Boston. In terms of the major industries, other than travel and the startup industries that I talked about, huge on medical, so there's probably about 5 or 6 hospitals that are within walking distance of 40Berkeley, so if you get sick, 40Berkeley is a good place to be. Finance is also very big. There's a lot of banks that have their headquarters there. Also car insurance. Driving in Boston is absolutely crazy, and I don't recommend it whatsoever, but if you do, know that there's lots of car insurance around. And also education. I'm sure you've all heard of Harvard, MIT, Boston University. There's about 88 colleges and institutions that are located in and around the greater Boston area. So if you're looking to go to school again, check out Boston. And in case you're geographically challenged like me, this is a little bit of information about where Boston's located. So you'll see Massachusetts is right up there on the northeastern coast. We're in the area of New England. We're like right at the southern tip of it. And Boston is located right on the central east coast of Massachusetts. We have a really beautiful harbor, lots of beaches. It's really easy to kind of get into the mountains and be on the beach all in one day. And this is where we are. We're right in the center of the city. We're tucked away in a nice little residential area, so you don't get the noise of the city, but we're 2 blocks away from the most major street that runs through the center of Boston. So it's a pretty sweet location. We love it. It's not all easy though. There's only about 1,000 beds in Boston, so the hostel scene in Boston is really, really new. Depending on the time of year, there's a hostel that sometimes is open in the summer, but the new hostel, that was the Hostel International, which actually just opened a brand new location in Chinatown, so that one's not even there anymore. So there's really only about 4 or 5 hostels in the greater Boston area, and as you can see, they're pretty spread out. I mean, one of them all the way up there in the north isn't even in Boston. That's like a totally different town. They're all pretty basic, and they're all very diverse and unique. So, and you can see, you know, in the summer and the winter, the prices really vary. Those are prices per bed. In the winter, pretty much from like November to March, you really don't get a ton of business at all. No one really comes to Boston. It's not just the hostel scene. It's really everyone. The city kind of dies because it's really, really cold. And these are some difficulties. If you're looking to open a hostel in Boston, this is probably a good reason why there aren't too many. Boston, it's interesting because Massachusetts is super